Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Come on in, the water is fine. Are you sitting comfortably? Good, then I'll begin. Now, in my IT days, I supported a lot of financial software, and it's still an area that I remember fondly. So today, I wanted to explore the non-traditional space of accounting software, because Mike Whitmire is the co-founder and CEO of a company called FloQast. And it is a closed management software company that is helping rapidly growing companies, particularly those pre-IPO and public companies, and helping them close their monthly financial books with greater accuracy and speed. And Mike started his career as an accountant at one of the big four and then worked in an accounting department of Cornerstone OnDemand, a high-flying software company where he helped prepare the company for its IPO. So I want to learn more about those experiences that Mike had and how it inspired and motivated him to leave the accounting profession and found a company focused on automating and improving the accuracy of accounting operations and moving it from a world of thousands of spreadsheets and pages of checklists to modern software. And here in 2020, FloQast is an emerging leader in closed management software with over 800 customers, including some pretty big names like pre-IPO private companies such as the Golden State Warriors, Yelp, Zoom, Lyft, and there's a long list of big names there. And it's also got a great story to boot. And Mike is definitely one of the good guys to tackle this subject today. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to California, where Mike is waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Mike Whitmire, co-founder and CEO of FloQast. And I'm a startup entrepreneur. My background, oddly enough, is in accounting, actually. And while I was working in the accounting world, I realized we had this really big pain point around collaboration and some manual processes in the month-end close. And so left my job in corporate America to start working on FloQast. And that's what we help with is the month-end close and reconciliation process. And started the company in 2013. So we've been at it for about 7 years at this point.
And as you said there, my understanding is FloQast is this closed management software company that helps rapidly growing companies, particularly pre-IPO and public companies, and help them close those monthly financial books with greater accuracy and speed. And we all know what a problem that is. But can you set the scene and tell listeners a little bit more about the kind of problems that you solve, and also what actually makes FloQast different from all those other solutions out there?
Yeah, so accounting is, believe it or not, it's a really interesting field, especially at a scaling company. So when you're a pretty early stage business, like FloQast, we're 160 employees today. We have 4 people in finance and accounting. So when you're that size, you kind of just all work together. You can look over at the person next to you at the desk and get your work done every month and get the books closed. And ultimately, you're producing financial statements as a result of that process. So it's a really important process because it has to get done before you can really move forward with the business and make any strategic changes. And as you get bigger, it gets more and more complicated. So all of a sudden you add more people to the equation. As we all know, the more people are involved in anything, the more difficult it is to collaborate around that. There are a lot of manual processes involving pen and paper or Excel workbooks. It's the reconciliation process is the big one where you're just looking at data and all different sources, making sure it's the same. And as you become a bigger organization, you have more data. And so that problem just gets worse and worse. Then you keep getting bigger, you go public, you go through the S1 drafting process. All of a sudden you're getting audited. You have to close the books on a quarterly basis. You have to start reporting financial statements to the public. You have other regulation that comes into play, namely Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, which means all kinds of processes and procedures need to go in that you're not used to. So accounting becomes exponentially more difficult as you scale as an organization. And that was exactly what I experienced. I joined a company that was a software company. When I started there, we had 5 people in accounting. A year later, we went public, and I was there for 3 years, and we scaled up to about 50 people and went through all those challenges. And so when I left that job, because I was a practitioner in the space, I had basically just built a piece of software that would have helped me, selfishly. And I would have been one of the users of the application. So I was a senior accountant, kind of a lower level accountant when I started the company. And what that means is we naturally built something that users get a ton of value out of. And when you're a business and you buy a piece of collaboration software and the users of that application get a ton of value out of it, what that means is the application is going to actually get adopted and be a really big success at the company. And management's going to be really happy with that decision because they get everything they need out of it as long as the users are using it. So it was sort of accidental that we stumbled into that competitive advantage. I hadn't really processed it up front, but you fast forward into selling a few years and it became pretty apparent that, this, buy accounts for accounts thing is very real. It was a product built by people who understand your pain point to help solve that pain point. One of our big things was we didn't want to change how everyone's doing their job. So we kind of fit within the mold of what they're doing today, just built technology to empower them to be better at it. So you combine all those things, and that's our differentiator is buy accounts for accountants, software that's really quick to deploy, easy to use, and makes clients really, really happy.
There's so much cool stuff you're doing at the moment. One of the things I always try and do on this Daily Tech podcast is I find myself interested in the story behind the company and what inspired you to solve the problems with technology. So can I take you way back to where your career began as that accountant at one of the big 4? And can you share the story there? I mean, you did share one a moment ago. Was it that, or was there another moment?
It was sort of a culmination of a lot of things, but yeah, and actually it goes back further than that because I met my co-founder in college. So my co-founder, Chris, and we were both majoring in accounting at Syracuse together. And after we graduated, I moved back to Los Angeles. He ended up going to New Jersey to work in an audit firm. But I started at Ernst & Young, and that was really obviously my introduction to accounting, the month-end close. And more specifically, I was assigned to mid-market entertainment companies and accounting at a mid-market business. And when I say mid-market, I mean, picture maybe 30 to 100 people inside of the accounting department. So that's about the size we're talking. That's very different than doing the accounting at a Fortune 500 company where you have maybe a couple thousand accountants at that type of business. So I got specifically introduced to this mid-market within the entertainment world. And while I was there, just from the audit side of the table, it's like, why is the close so hard? This seems pretty straightforward. I don't really get it. There's a checklist of things we have to do. We go through it. And I saw that repeatedly at my different clients that it was a pain point. But at on the flip side of it, I'm at Ernst & Young. We're a huge company. We have hundreds of thousands of employees. It's really buttoned up. We have our own audit software we use to go through this. It makes life really easy. It's pretty consistent, and I felt really supported as an employee, I guess. Then I moved over to, after 3.5 years at EY, I got my CPA license, was happy to get out of the audit world and joined Cornerstone was the name of the software company I joined. And when I got to Cornerstone, all of a sudden I'm plopped into kind of a startup environment where I have no software to help me with anything. I have no onboarding materials. There are no, HR resources. There's no training thing that's able to help us or anything like that. So it was just very much the wild, wild west and figure out what you need to get done. And I just kind of started working that way. My mentality was like, okay, this is how it's done when you get out of audit. It just is what it is. And then as we grew as a company, the problem became even worse. And I started to really understand why the close was so painful. Because I was on the accountant side of the table now. And I realized a big part of it was we weren't empowered by software like what I had at Ernst & Young to manage the audit. So oddly enough, the software that we built to help with the close process is actually very inspired by the audit software I used at Ernst & Young. It's the general idea that we're trying to collaborate around a process. We have consistent procedures we go through with this. We need to save documentation. We need to sign off on things and prove that we did certain types of work. So I kind of took that as inspiration and thought, okay, why isn't there something like that to help accountants manage the close? And as I looked around, I couldn't really find anything that fit our needs. And that was the inspiration for starting FloQast. The specific moment was in a status update meeting with 20 or 30 people in this big boardroom, just going around the table, telling our boss where we stood with the close. That was my point of snapping, where there's got to be a better way to do this. And that was when I really started to look around and see if there was anything was a status update meeting.
And of course, 7 years later, FloQast is now an emerging leader in close management software with 800 plus customers, including many public companies and late stage pre-IPO private companies. And there's some big names in there, such as the Golden State Warriors, Yelp, Zoom, and Lyft. And I could go on, but hey, can you tell me more about that journey and how you attracted big names like that?
Yeah, so that was a fun story. We started selling our product. It took us a while to build the product, and we actually built one version, scrapped the entire thing, and built a second version when we had an idea for a better way to do it. So we started selling in 2015, and we had a really simple product. There were 12 people working at FloQast. We had just raised a really small amount of money. So we were trying to figure out, what's the smartest way to go to market. And we had the thought that the people most likely to take a risk on a business like FloQast and trust us with their financial statements would probably be other early stage software companies. And with that theory in mind, we got a hold of something called the JMP Hot 100 SaaS list. And so what that is an investment banking firm by the name of JMP Securities. Every year they put together a list of the 100 hottest SaaS companies that are early stage businesses. And so if you go back in time and look at this Hot 100 list, like if you look at the 2013 list, you're going to see a whole lot of companies that are public today. And that goes back a few years. So what we said was, all right, let's get the list from 2015, 2014, 2013, and 2012. Those 400 companies right there that are probably a really good fit for FloQast. And that was the list we started going after. So it was very targeted with businesses we thought would be likely to purchase FloQast. Through that strategy, we were able to bring on about 50 clients in our first year of selling. And that's where a lot of the great names come from, like Twilio. You look at Twilio today, they started with us at 12 users when they came on board, had a great IPO, have grown, have gone international, and they have about 70 people in accounting today. So that was sort of how we got into these early stage, high growth companies. And those ones that we signed when they were pre-IPO, as soon as they start going public, we have more referenceable clients. We can start to point to them. We can start to now target more directly up market as time goes on. So it was in later years we were able to get into the Lyfts of the world and the Zooms of the world, was after we had already proven that we could support public companies. So early on, it was that early stage high growth tech companies. And then geographically, it sort of naturally played out this way, but was also very intentional, was we wanted to create a stronghold in the Bay Area. I'm of the opinion that the Bay Area sets the tone for the rest of the world on what software is ultimately going to be used. And so we wanted to be the de facto close management solution for the Bay Area. So we had a strategic initiative starting in Q1 2015 called Beat Up the Bay. And that was where we got up. We went up there and just tried to get every single logo we possibly could. I was on a plane, very frequently with my director of sales to close all these deals. And that has served us really well as time has gone on, because it's sort of played out how we expected. The Bay Area truly does set the tone for what software is going to be used.
And a question I've got to ask is, what were your biggest challenges in taking what some would call mundane world of audit workflow management to the cloud and actually making it sexy? Because you guys make it sound incredibly cool.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of our product and our people. We, from a people perspective and a brand perspective, we are accountants. We get this stuff. We don't try to take it too seriously. We've been in the trenches. We understand how people work and think. And so we recognize that, it's just a painful process. We got to get through it, and we want to make it as easy as possible. And let's keep things light with that. And then on the software side, it really is about building software that works the way they already work. It's easy to use, doesn't require big administrative changes or a huge overhaul to your process. And then when you combine great software with great people, and then we provide next level service and support to our clients. I mean, this is kind of the number one thing. If you really talk to our clients, they will rave about our support nonstop. That's another component. And we headed into the company, well aware that in the finance and accounting market, there is a very low bar for service and support that these software companies provide their clients. And so heading into it, we were like, hey, if we just provide the level of support that we would want as a client, that is going to be a huge differentiator in the market. So that's all we did was we said, hey, if we were a client, of FloQasts, how would we want to be treated? And we decided to treat our clients that way. And what that means is we have, apparently one of the highest levels of support in the industry. That's all it took to make that happen. And we're able to do that because we're born and raised on the cloud. It's very cheap for us to maintain and develop our software, so we can commit more resources towards our support side of the house. And I think that's been a huge, huge, huge differentiator for us.
And I'm glad you mentioned your clients there, because your passion for your community really shines through. And before we spoke today, I recently read that you listened to your community and as a result introduced amortization reconciliation to FloQast AutoRec. But just saying those words out loud, I know there's going to be a lot of people that will just sound like white noise, and others will say, is amortization even a word? But
yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the first AI-powered solution in the industry and how it actually helps you work faster, make fewer mistakes, especially when it comes to account reconciliations, but in a language that everyone can understand, which could be a bit of a challenge for you, but I think you'll be up for it.
I'll give it a shot, and I'll try to not bore the audience too much, but a reconciliation process is something that occurs all over accounting, and believe it or not, it occurs outside of accounting and in our regular lives as well. A reconciliation is really simple. It's looking at two different data sets, and you're looking at transactions in each of those data sets, and you're just going back and forth and making sure both of them are included in both of those data sets. So a really good example is when you look at, I hate to get too boring, but the best I can do, no one balances their checkbook anymore, so it makes it a little more challenging. But for example, if you're looking at your credit card statement, if I got a copy of my physical paper credit card statement and I want to make sure there's no fraud, I might compare that back to my credit card account online. And going from my document to the internet, document to internet, back and forth, looking at every transaction is a reconciliation process. And now let's go back to accounting. You can find yourself looking at bank accounts in an accounting system at a mid-market company that has tens of thousands of transactions in it. Like quite literally Lyft has millions of transactions every single day that they're having to reconcile. And so it's a huge pain point for them. And what our system does is we take both sides of those data sets, we compare every single transaction for you. That's what our AI does. And we start to match them if they match. And the ones that don't match fall out of the bottom of it. And that's what accountants want to spend their time on, is the ones that do not match. So I hope I did that in a non-boring way, but the summary is it's very cool because we are taking super boring, super tedious work off the accountants' plates. We're allowing them to focus on exceptions and pick their head up a little bit and be more strategic, as an accountant within that department.
Man, I think that your enthusiasm for what you do, I think you could read the phone book and make it sound interesting, honestly. But you did a great job of that. But
I'll tell you, I like accounting a whole lot more now that I'm not doing it and I'm helping make it better. I really, I've never loved accounting more than I do today.
Love it. And I also believe I need to congratulate you, as FloQast has also for the fourth year in a row been named one of LA Business Journal's top companies to work at, ranking number one. That. Yeah, number one overall for tech companies. I mean, what is your secret there?
Yeah, kind of similar to the philosophy with clients where we treated them the way we would have wanted to be treated. As I mentioned, I was a senior accountant. I was a kind of low-ranking employee coming out of the trenches at Cornerstone. And so when I started the company, hey, let's make a place I'd want to work at. And that means, treating people well, empowering them, paying fair market value is a really big thing, giving people autonomy. We do all the, classic tech stuff, like you got the ping pong table, the free snacks, all those things are, kind of table stakes at this point. But I think it is hiring great people, having the focus, having a customer-centric focus really helps drive a lot of good energy at the company. And I think we're all wrapped around the same mission, which is, making accountants' lives easier, and building a huge business as well. I'm I love talking about the company we're building. We have clear IPO ambitions, and we bring on a lot of people who are just kind of interested in the business aspect of things in addition to the mission of FloQast. And so I'm very transparent about things like board meetings. I actually show board decks to the entire company, so we're all on the same page with what we're doing. We show financial numbers, we show the good, the bad, and I think that level of transparency around our business with our employees is really empowering for them and makes them feel much more like part of the company. Whereas, if I kept all the board meetings secret, I didn't share our numbers, no one had any idea how we were performing, they might start to, ask more questions and not feel quite as invested in the company. So a myriad of things, and I'm very, very grateful that it's worked out really well, and we've won that award 4 years in a row, and take a lot of pride in winning that award. Yeah.
And something else I try and do on this Daily Tech podcast is give a guest an opportunity to bust any of those myths or misconceptions. So I'm going to throw this one out to you. I'm curious, are there any common myths in your industry that you'd like to finally lay to rest today? Because I'm sure there's more than a few.
Yeah, I've actually been talking about this a lot lately. I think accountants themselves are very misunderstood. We're clearly stereotyped across the world as, bean counters, pretty boring people, professional, buttoned up, that kind of thing. It really couldn't be further from the truth. At this point, back when we were able to go to conferences, in the pre-COVID world, for those listening, this is filmed during COVID while the United States is doing a terrible job of containing it. So for some reference or some context there. But back in the conference days, I would go on the conference circuit. I've met thousands and thousands of accountants over the years doing FloQast, and we are not, as buttoned up as you would think. It's a pretty relaxed group where I think it's funny. There's a lot of self-deprecating humor involved in this market. I think it's kind of what you have to do to get through the job is make jokes about yourself. So yeah, I would just say the myths and the stereotypes around accountants being boring, buttoned up people is pretty incorrect. And I've seen it play out at a whole lot of conferences where I like to have fun, like to crack jokes, enjoy a drink or two here and there. And yeah, that's treat your local accountant better. That's all I'd like to wrap up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said there, the days of tech conferences and chatting with people on the showroom floor, it seems like a lifetime away already, doesn't it?
It does. Time is in quarantine. It's the weirdest thing. The last 6 months feels like the shortest time frame and the longest time frame ever. It's the weirdest contrast here.
It really does. And we're all surrounded by a lot of uncertainty at the moment. So what's next for FloQast? Where do you go from here?
So I'm really excited about what's next, actually. So with COVID, we took a pause in Q2. We had a lot of growth plans for this year because we actually raised $40 million in January. So that all hit the bank. Timing was very fortunate. And we were planning on hiring 100 people. So instead of doing that, we hunkered down a little bit to see how things played out. We had big plans to expand into EMEA and, specifically into London. Those were put on pause, but Q2 went really well for us. The realities of quarantine were that people really needed to collaborate more so cloud-based applications were in more demand, and we really wanted to automate a lot of tedious work. So FloQast, things went well for us from a revenue perspective, and we're feeling really confident in the business. We are very impressed with how Europe at large is handling COVID and seems to be getting back to normal a little bit faster than most. And so we've actually re-accelerated our plans for EMEA expansion, which I'm really excited about. I think our product will fit really well over there. I think there's a huge untapped opportunity for it. And it's really cool. We actually already have quite a few of our clients have offices in London or Ireland or the local area, and it's been working out really well. So the future for us is international expansion, and part of raising that money also was to continue to invest in product and also roll out new product lines. So I'm excited we have all that money because we can continue to iterate and enhance our core product. We can continue to roll out more features around the AutoRec solution. And then we're now working on our third product line, which we will be releasing in November here. So yeah, exciting future. We have all kinds of new stuff going on, very much powered by all that money that we raised in January.
Well, I'd love to get you back on later in the year and find out how that journey's going. But for everyone listening at the moment who'd like to find out more information about the great work that you're doing, where you're heading, and just keep up to speed with things, what's the best way of doing that? And equally contacting your team if anyone's got any questions.
Yeah, so just the website, FloQasts.com, great place to catch up on us. I recommend our blog. We have a lot of great content up there about accounting, but also entrepreneurship in general. And yeah, just digging around the website and you can find anything. And if anyone wants to chat with me, reach out on LinkedIn. I share some stuff and like to be active on LinkedIn. So feel free to send me a request and I will go ahead and accept that.
Excellent. Well, I love what you're doing here, especially how you're using technology to help rapidly growing companies and those pre-IPO and public companies close their monthly financial books with greater accuracy and greater speed, because I think it's one of the big headaches that we all know about. But I think what you're doing here in a unique way is quite inspiring, as is your enthusiasm and passion for what you do. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with me today.
Appreciate the kind words, Neil. Thank you so much for having me on board.
Mike is one of those rare breeds of individuals that can explain complicated topics in a clear and concise manner. And easy to see why he's got his own podcast as well, which is called Cloud Accounting. So check that out if you enjoyed today's episode. And big kudos to Mike, really, for joining me today and sharing his story and for somehow managing to make the mundane world of audit workflow management to the cloud and making it sexy. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Keep your questions coming in. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. But we are somehow at the end of another episode, which means it's nearly time for me to go. So if you do need help with launching your own podcast or thought leadership blogs, or you just got a question, send those over to me. If not, have no fear. I'll join you again tomorrow for more of the same. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.